How is it that in the last 120 years, we've gone from farming, groceries, sports, and even something as simple as sewing involving so much technology in today's world? I mean, if you really think about it, it's starting to get ridiculous. There's technology in every single industry, and it feels like every single person could now say, I work in technology, because everything has to do with technology and it's so intertwined in our daily lives. And then if we think about how all of these changes and the way that technology is used in all these different industries and how that impacts our day-to-day life, it might feel like life has started to shift into warp drive mode and cause us to ask the question, what is going on? Well, that's exactly what we'll be talking about in today's video, called How Technology is Shaping the Economy. So for most of human history, humans have had to either grow or hunt their own food or make their own clothing and equipment to go about their daily lives. If for some reason you weren't able to do these things yourself, there was what was called the barter system, where you could trade one good for another, which then eventually led to currencies, which allowed you to do the same thing just using a dollar or a coin of some sort. This is all pretty elementary, so I'm sure you're probably aware of this. But there's some crazy things that have happened over the last several decades that have totally changed the way goods get from one place to another. Instead of relying on your local area and finding somebody in your neighborhood or your town to produce a good or create a good for you and then go barter or buy from them, the internet and this trend called globalization has totally shifted the way that the entire world works. And in some ways, it's actually pretty amazing to think how much has changed in the last several years. But there's also some really important things to be aware of as well, especially considering how dependent the world now is on this globalization of economies. So a quick example that we can dive into is an avocado. If we talk about an avocado, that might be grown in Mexico, but then it could be shipped across the ocean to Indonesia just to be packaged, cleaned off, and assembled in a way that consumer would want to purchase the good. Then from there, crates and boxes of avocados could get shipped across the ocean to the United States, thrown on a shipping truck, and delivered to a local grocery store for somebody to pick up themselves. So what used to be more of a simple system that was more locally based, where maybe you would just have somebody in your local area or even in your state that grows the avocado and ships it down the road or across the state to your local area, we have what is this amazing system shipping what is a simple avocado all across the world, and somehow it makes economic and fiscal sense all along the way. Well, as you probably know, software and AI is what makes this possible. So what used to be a really complicated task to decide how much and when and how to ship all these goods from one place to another, and why would it make sense to do it this way as opposed to another, it's all now possible because of things like artificial intelligence, software, and the internet. If you think about it, just 100 years ago, the internet didn't exist, and therefore, you couldn't easily communicate this information from one place to another, let alone have a computer make these decisions like what ship to put a load of avocados on and where to ship it to and where it needs to end up in the end, in order for the entire cost of creating that end product avocado is going to actually lead to profits for the company involved. And let's face it, the reality here is that companies started doing this not because it was cool to start using technology, but because for some reason or another, it actually made more sense to do it this way than to keep things local. So what we see now is all this analog information that used to be communicated by mouth or in person, face to face, is now able to be automatically sent digitally using the internet, and computers are making all these decisions for us, meaning that the world is able to communicate on an instant basis and create these very complex supply chains, creating this globalization effect like humanity's never seen before. Not only has technology completely shifted how economies work, but also acted as a force multiplier for human capability. In today's world, a single person can do the equivalent work output of 10 people back, decades ago. go just because they have systems and technologies working for them and in their favor. So we have this massive leverage approach, just like how when farmers went from digging and sowing the seeds themselves by hand using a shovel to these tractors being able to do it for us. It's similar with now the way that the modern economy works. What'll be really interesting to see is how new fields like augmented reality and virtual reality change the way that current workplaces operate today. So for example, a lot of workplaces depend on face-to-face interaction to a certain extent. While the last few years have definitely shifted the dependence on working face-to-face, there is still a need seen in many different industries to have more of an in-person interaction, and one that can't really be recreated using a webcam and a microphone done on a conferencing system. But it's my personal opinion that eventually technologies like VR and new quantum simulation systems are going to actually be able to recreate real-life experiences for us and enable someone to seemingly instantly teleport across the world and actually feel like they're having a face-to-face conversation with somebody without actually having to do that transportation themselves. So what this means is you open up the possibility of more and more continued work across the world without having to actually be in the same place. Much like how with logistics and supply chains work with the avocado, the manual and mental labor that has to happen today to operate all of these computers and systems that do a lot of the work for us and create the leverage, now that's also going to be able to be done globalized as well. So in addition to globalized supply chain, we're also seeing this impact of globalized working remote and being able to work with anyone in the world on a project. Some technologies that have enabled this to happen are currency exchange and payment platforms like PayPal as an example. And of course, like I mentioned, video conference is a key technology that has really started to become more present over the last few years. People have become a lot more comfortable working remotely using video conference, and freelance marketplaces like Fiverr, Upwork, and freelancer.com. These are all basically cloud and network-based gig economy type platforms where people can connect with other people and get work done. So it's basically this infinite sea of workers or opportunities for people to make money. And it's because of all these changes that I think we're going to see what is more like the modern day Ford assembly line, but for the way that work is done. What I mean by this is people will get really specialized in a certain aspect of a process, and you may not have to physically be in the same location as other people that are up the chain or down the chain from that process that you're supporting. So you could work for a company that is based overseas, do one part of maybe their marketing or their design for the company, and not have to actually be located with them. And because of this, you own just a small part of the process, which means that you become an expert in that process. And perhaps you may also work with multiple companies as opposed to a single one because you're not limited to the geographical opportunities, and maybe companies don't need to hire you for an entire work week to do this one specific task. Overall, it makes the entire system more efficient, and it totally changes the way that the economy works when it comes to the labor market. So really interesting thing to watch out for, and I'm curious to see how it evolves over the coming years thanks to these new technologies. So it's crazy to think we're really just in the infancy of the internet boom. If you think about how when the wheel was invented, that was just the beginning of such a big journey and a big pivot in the way that humanity could operate. The internet I see is such a more broad and impactful technology that has yet to really show its full impact. So it'll be really interesting to see more in how all of this technology is going to continue to develop and continue to shape our global economy and what that ends up looking like for a common person like you and I. And the important thing to realize here is gone are the days of simple economies. Now things are going to be so much more connected than they ever have been before. Whether you're overseas in a totally different country on a different side of the world, the impacts that you see are going to become a lot more similar to the impacts that I might see where I'm located. So because of this, we'll all be a lot more connected, but also the entire world will start to see impacts rather than just local regions, and it'll just be a very, very different way that the world operates. Real quickly before we close out here, if you want to keep up with the latest technology trends, I started a Slack group for any any leaders, executives, entrepreneurs, people who are interested in technology and how it's shaping the future. So whether you work in a business or you run a business yourself and you just want to be around like-minded people who like technology, want to learn how to use it to create leverage and make your life easier, I'll leave a link down in the description below so you can join. It's a free Slack group, but we do have high standards. We want to make sure that the community is filled with value. So only join if you are interested in being surrounded with this type of community. So that's it for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if anything, my goal here was just to inspire a little bit more thought around how technology is actually impacting the economy so that you and me can think about what we need to do to upskill for the future. If I accomplish that goal in any way, I would just ask that you press the like button below and subscribe if you want to keep up with more. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.